Welcome to day 31, and in this particular video we are going to talk about the AWS Lambda. So in this video we are going to focus on this Lambda one, and we will talk about this service in detail. We will cover the theory part, and also we will see how to create your first Lambda function from the AWS console itself. Correct. So this is what we are going to cover. So before this, we have talked about the AWS EC2 instance, AWS BPC, AWS IAM role policy, AWS S3 buckets, and AWS RDS services. And we have talked in details like the load balancer, pathways routing, launch template, auto scaling group, BPC peering, transit gateway, NAT gateway, internet gateway, your transit gateway setup for multiple to establish the communication between multiple BPC. We have talked about the AWS S3 buckets, how to host your static website, how to enable this S3 CORS concept. All these things we have talked in the details. And with continuation to our DevOps journey, in this particular video, we are focusing we are targeting AWS Lambda to cover up. Correct. So we have talked about the EC2 instances before, correct? So that was the compute server where we were focusing on how much memory, how much CPU we have to allocate according to our use case, correct? If we had to host our application, so according to our use case, we had to decide where we had to use T3.medium, Ta4.large, and so on, correct? M5.x large. So these kind of instance selections we had to do. Here, AWS Lambda is called a serverless compute service. As you can see, the first point itself, it's called as serverless compute service. What does that mean? That means you don't have to worry about the how much CPU, how much memory is going to be utilized over here. What does it enables? It enables you to run code in response to events without provisioning or managing servers. That means here you don't have to worry about the provisioning of the servers, the actual servers, the servers, just like the EC2, correct, where you had to provision the EC2 and you had to focus on the infra side, how much memory, how much CPU you have to allocate. Here you don't have to worry. You will just write the code, you will run that code, correct. It might be triggered from some other AWS services, or it might be triggered from the AWS event bridge, your cron expression or API gateway, or from some other AWS services, correct. But you don't have to worry about anything about the servers detail. What's the second point? With the Lambda, you upload your code and define the condition for execution, and AWS takes care of the underlying infrastructure. So you just have to write down your code, you have to define your logics, conditions, and it will execute the things. You don't have to ultimately worry about the infrastructure, correct. All the underlying infrastructure will be taken care by the AWS Lambda itself. Auto scaling and managing resources as needed, correct. So either it will scale up the number of servers, either it will scale down the number of servers based on the requirement and for how much long it has to run, correct. So this is also covered by the AWS Lambda itself. Then you can run a trigger of 100 triggers. Lambda will scale automatically, correct. So that's your third point. Supported language, you can write down your code either in the node.js or the Python, the Go, Java, and many more technologies, correct. So this is the properties of the Lambda function. And if we talk about the key concepts of the AWS Lambda, the first point is it's an event driven architecture. What does that mean? It can be triggered by some custom events or by the AWS services. So what AWS services can be there? For example, let's consider the S3. So you can run your code in response to file upload or deletion. So just suppose that you have a one S3 bucket and you upload some of the objects, some of the files into your S3 bucket. A Lambda function can be triggered with response to this upload or deletion of the file into S3 bucket. The Lambda function will execute, either it can parse that file, it can do some logic operations on that, and it can perform certain actions according to your logic, correct. So that kind of trigger point can be set from the S3 to the Lambda. Then there is a DynamoDB table, it can process changes in table. Then API gateway is there. Whenever there will be get or post kind of call, the API gateway will call the Lambda function, and Lambda function will execute its logic, and it will perform some actions to either upload the data or to fetch the data. That kind of actions it can be done, correct. Then SNS and SQS, then there is a event bridge as well, which can be integrated with your Lambda function to do the event driven architecture, correct. Then what are the benefits of the Lambda function? So after this we will go to the AWS console as well. We will create our first Lambda function. Before that we are going through the theory, correct. And if you have not subscribed to my channel, so you can hit the bell icon as well. You can subscribe the channel as well, so that it will be easy for me as well to create some more such contents that will inspire me, that will motivate me as well. So what are the benefits of the Lambda function? The first is it's a serverless model. So you don't have to manage the servers, correct? AWS handles the infrastructure. So whatever the infrastructure is required to deploy your application, to run your application, all the server will be managed by AWS Lambda itself. So that's why it is called as serverless. You don't have to worry from end user perspective, correct? Second point stands for automatic scaling. Lambda scales automatically with the number of incoming requests. So the number of requests increases from sort 100 to 1000 to 10,000. The scaling of the infrastructure will happen automatically, correct. Third, cost effective. So as you know that AWS cloud itself is on the model pay as you go, while Lambda function comes with more benefit as well. You have to pay for only that time slot, or only that time period for which your code has compiled or code has executed, correct. So as you can see the terms here, you pay only for the compute time you consume. So if your code is running for 1 minute or 10 seconds, you have to pay for 10 seconds only. While if you talk about the EC2 instances, you launch your EC2 instance, your cost starts, correct. Whether you deploy now or you deploy after 5 minutes, you have to pay the cost associated with the EC2 because it's in the running state, correct. While the Lambda function does not work in this way. The time period Lambda function will be executed whether 10 seconds, 1 minute, 5 minutes, 10 milliseconds. You will be paying only for those particular time duration only, correct. So no charges when your code is not running, correct. Then for this, integrated with the AWS services. It can be easily integrated with AWS services to make event driven process within your AWS ecosystem. So in the similar way, what we talked about, the S3, DynamoDB, Event Bridge, API Gateway, SNS, SQS, all these things can be integrated here, and that can that's the actually the benefits of the Lambda function. You can create your event driven architecture to do some operations, correct. Then what are the basics of the Lambda functions? So you will see the handler function that we will create, the runtime environment we will do, and the execution roles, like what kind of roles and permission you want to grant to your Lambda functions, that we will cover up. So before talking much about in this, let's go to the AWS console, and we will see how to create your first Lambda function. So here we are on the AWS console side, and let me search for the Lambda function here. You will see this Lambda, and let's click on this, and within few seconds it should get populated, and here we will try to create our first Lambda function, correct. So as of now you can see there is no Lambda function, so let's click on the create a function, and I'm not going to integrate with anything. I'm just going to simply create one Lambda function, and the integration of the Lambda function, this one we will talk later on. So we'll be covering these three use cases: create event notification from S3 to Lambda. What we will cover in this, we will cover that whenever you upload a file into S3 bucket, Lambda function will be executed, and it will print the content of the object or the file, correct. So that we will set up. Then we will set up these two popular use cases where in terms of the operations, so auto start RDS and auto stop RDS. So what it will cover, it will cover that whenever you want to stop your database. So most likely you might like to stop your database on the weekends, correct. On the Saturday, Sunday, your dev test kind of, or the non-production databases you can stop to save the cost, correct. While from Monday to Friday you will keep all the database up and running. You can even shut down your databases in the evening after the 10 p.m. up to the 8 a.m. morning, correct. So these things can be set up, correct, to save the cost if your team is not working in that particular time duration. So these are the two popular use cases in terms of the DevOps, in terms of the operations perspective. So these two things also we will cover up. In this particular video, we will be talking about simply create a one lambda function only. So here I'm creating as a demo function that I will call demo function. The technology or the runtime programming language I will be selecting as Python 3.9. Then you can either go with the x64 ARM64 or according to your uh, requirement. Then the role we were talking about, correct, change default execution role. So either you can create a new role with basic lambda permission, you can use existing role if you have created earlier any role that you can use, or you can create a new role from AWS policy templates, so that you will have to pass here the policy and all the things, correct. So either I can select the existing one what I might have created before. So RDS stop role, I think this one I have created before, so this one I can use, or I can create a new one, correct. So it will automatically create. So let's go with the create a new role with basic lambda permissions, create functions, and you will see that lambda function will be created within seconds, and you will see all the default properties, all the default configurations of the lambda function will be there. So let's wait for a few seconds, and yes, successfully created the function demo function. Here your demo function is created. Here if you see the options, there is an option to add triggers. So triggers we talked about here, correct. So we talked about these triggers, either the S3, DynamoDB, API Gateway, SNS, SQS, all these things can be associated here as a part of your trigger. So if you click on the trigger, you will see the available options. Either you can attach this Alexa, API Gateway, code commit, you can select your CloudWatch logs, you can select your event bridge, you can select your S3, SNS, SQS, and all these are the different services, different your the partner event sources. With the help of that, you can uh, create your trigger which will execute your lambda function, correct. Then you have this configuration section, correct. So as you see in the configuration section, if you add the trigger, that trigger will be here. Then in the permissions, the role we were talking about, so here you will see the role which is created and what are all the permissions associated with this. So even you can see from the console here as well, the allow logs, create log group, but here also you can see the same role. So this is the role which has been created automatically by the lambda function, and this is the policy which is attached. So what are the actions? It's logs, create log group, create log streams, put log events, and this is for the demo function, AWS Lambda demo function. Which resource? This is the lambda function ARN, correct. So this is the role has been created, and who can assume this role? So lambda amazon aws.com. So apart from that, there is a destination. This is not of any use, and you can integrate your VPC if you want to make it in the private subnet or that kind of network if you want to bound. So for that, you can integrate your VPC here. You can click on the edit. You can select your default VPC. You can select your subnets according to the availability zones, the different subnets you can select. Then environment variables, like if your code has some of the variables, you want to pass some variables value from the lambda function in your code, correct. For that, you can click on the edit. You can add the environment variables over here. You can click on the add environment variable. You can add key value pair, and that key value pair can be utilized in your code. Here is the code. You can write down your code over here, and you can deploy the code. Once you deploy the code, you can click on the test, and your test will be what we say, your test will be created, and according to your test, you can see the response, and that response will help you to understand whether your code is working fine or not, correct. Then you see the other details, the code properties, 299, the packet size of the code 299 byte, and this is the function call uh, calling way, correct. So we are using Python 3.9, and handler is lambda function dot lambda handler. So we will have to define lambda handler over here in the code, as you can see directly from here as well. So the one lambda handler is defined, and in the lambda handler we will call our other functions whatever we will define. Correct. So lambda function will call lambda handler, and lambda handler will call ultimately all the different functions what you will be defining over here. So this is how you can create your lambda functions. You can monitor as well. You can click on the monitor section. You can see the CloudWatch logs if there is any logs which is being populated. That you can see. You can see how many times your lambda function has been invoked and other details here in the CloudWatch matrix. So for how many number of times your lambda function has been invoked, how many for how much duration it has been invoked, what are the error counts, success rate, total concurrent execution, throttles, and other metrics which are available here over here. So all these things you can monitor from here, and you can work with your lambda function. The CloudWatch logs we were talking about, so whatever the code execution will happen, and according to your logging what you have written, you will see some of the log streams will be generated over here. Right now we don't have anything, so it is not reflecting anything, but as soon as you will write some code, you will write some logic, you will do the execution, log streams will be populated over here, and you will be able to see those log streams. So this is the way how you can create your lambda function. You can work with your lambda function. You can do the trigger mechanism over here, and your lambda function will work. So in next video we will be talking about the any particular use case. We will start with the create event notification from S3 to lambda, and then in another video we will cover up these two. Correct. So till the time, thank you so much for watching this video, and stay tuned to the channel and subscribe to the channel for more such contents. Thank you.